Welcome to the House District 39B Candidates Forum. My name is Margot Reinberger. The Stillwater Gazette has sponsored this forum for the past 25 years. 2 candidates have filed for District 39B. DFL endorsed Shelley Christensen and Republican endorsed incumbent Kathy Lomer. Thank you both. During the 45-minute forum, each candidate will be invited to give a prepared 1-minute opening and 1-minute closing. And you'll have up to 2 minutes to respond to questions, and I can adjust that accordingly if I have to. Moderator discretion comes into play then. Susan Fremming from Oak Park Heights will be the timekeeper. She has a 1 minute, 30 seconds, 15 seconds, and stop time card. She has been instructed and happy to enforce the time. I will make the decision on whether and how much rebuttal time will be allowed if it's necessary. Okay. And please save your talking for after this forum, and you can chat all you want after. That'll be fine. I'll begin opening statements with Shelley.
Hello, everyone. My name is Shelley Christensen. I am a lifelong resident of the St. Croix Valley. I was raised on a farm in Marie on the St. Croix. I'm a Marine Elementary alumni. Is there feedback here? Okay. Stillwater High School alumni. I'm a retired teacher from Stillwater High School. I'm currently still coaching track and cross country for the school district, so I've been involved in my school district all of my life. I'm still on the school calendar after 63 years. I am married to Scott Christensen, who is also a retired teacher and coach, and we've been in the community, involved in community events for years. He's on the park board. I've been on the planning commission. I'm a board member of the DFL Environmental Caucus, and I'm ready to be your leader here in 39B. Thank you.
Thank you, Kathy Lomer.
Good evening, and thank you so much to the Gazette, to you, Margot and Beth, for organizing this forum tonight, and thank you very much to Valley Access also for taping this, and I'm just really grateful for all of you who are here tonight to participate and watch, and it's been just a tremendous honor and privilege to serve the citizens of District 39B for the last 8 years, and I'm really proud of the work that we did in the last session. I'm married to my husband, Greg, for 39 years. We have 4 sons, 4 daughter-in-laws, and 4 grandkids, and very proud of all of them. And I just will chat briefly about some of the great things that we accomplished last session. We lowered healthcare costs. We got rid of surprise billing. We provided the largest tax cuts in decades, provided funding for roads and bridges without raising gas taxes, and we have the lowest unemployment rate since 1999, 2.8%. And so we should go into the next session in great fiscal shape. Thank you.
Thank you, and you have 2 minutes for the question. Shelley, I'll begin with you. Voters often hear the phrase or goal of fully funding public education. What does or should that entail, and is it a moving target?
Absolutely, it's a moving target. I mean, times change, needs change, communities change, schools change, so absolutely it's a moving target. But we do need to address the per pupil funding. That's the the easiest method that we have right now to make sure that we are funding the students in the buildings. Sometimes I think that's forgotten, that we're teaching kids, we're teaching little people there, and those, for each body that we have there, we need to make sure that we're funding our buildings, so that every single one of those kids, excuse me, is addressed. Fully funding also means having mental health counselors. It means having nurses. It means having after-school programs for kids. It means having enrichment programs and education programs, after school. So yes, it is a moving target. In this district, we've seen some problems that have happened because of the lack of school funding, and the state has dropped the ball on it. We need to pay more attention to how we're funding the buildings, how we're funding the schools, so that all of the burden doesn't fall on local taxpayers, because we are paying those taxes, whether it's the money's coming from the state or from referendum levies, whatever. Locally, we are paying those taxes, so we need to get the state back on board, and that's what I hope to do at the legislature.
Thank you, Kathy.
Thank you, Margo, for the question. Yes, education funding is extremely important, and the Republicans have agreed with that over the time that I have served. I think since I was elected in 2008, we have increased per pupil funding by $1,700. And we definitely agree that this is a very important thing to do. Last year, the governor did, and we talked about this in the last forum, Representative Detmer and Mrs. Mosey talked about this. We had actually a supplemental budget request from the governor of roughly $100 million, and he came to the Republican majority legislature, and we actually nearly doubled that, or I think a little bit over doubled that at $200 million, and then he vetoed it. So that was very disheartening to me, because I don't think we should be playing politics with our students. And so, we have been on a trajectory. It's always the DFL that says that Republicans don't care about education. That nothing could be further than the truth. I'm a mom, I'm a grandma, I have kids in the district. Of course we care about education, and we want to do as much as we possibly can to fully fund when we can. But I just want to say that on a side note, we have test scores that have been flat for a number of years. So yes, fund as much as we possibly can, but we need to look at other factors that might be contributing to the fact that we have flat test scores, and money maybe isn't everything. So these are important. Funding is important, but other things are important as well.
Thank you. And I'm hearing whispering, and if there's any good secrets, let me in on them, because I'd like to know. Otherwise, hold off on your thoughts and tell me later. Kathy, recently, the state and 3M settled a lawsuit in order to improve groundwater contamination. As you know, there will be approximately $720 million directed towards improving this issue. As a representative of Lake Elmo, an area that has been described as ground zero for the contamination, what role do you see yourself playing in this matter?
Thank you, Margo. That's a great question. So I think the settlement was actually $800 million, and maybe after all of the fees for attorneys and whatever, it's down to $720 million. But I was actually a co-author on a bill that actually put some guardrails on that money, because we know that when you have a large settlement like that, and it's for the remediation and protection of the groundwater in that area, that we need to have protection so that that money does not get wasted or used inappropriately within the bureaucracies or whatever, but we wanted to make sure that we have that money used for what it was meant to be used for, what the settlement was meant for. So I was a co-author on that bill. I spoke about it on the House floor. It's a very important bill to have those guardrails, and we want to keep track of that. We want to make sure that the money is being used appropriately.
Thank you. Shelley.
I agree. The guardrails are good. We need to make sure that the money is going to the people who were the most affected, and that's the people in the East Metro and in our district, actually in West Lakeland and in Lake Elmo especially. So we need to make sure that the funds are going to those people. We also need to make sure in the legislature itself that we are finding funding for cities all over to be able to rebuild infrastructure so that we can treat our water and try to be sure that these things don't happen in the future. So water treatment infrastructure is in need. It is in great need, and we need to provide money to fix that. So our communities also need that. Another thing that we have going on with the 3M is not being able to fish in Lake Elmo, and I think that is an issue that doesn't get talked about a lot, but I just door knocked around the lake this past weekend, and it is an issue for those people. So that's, everything that I'm talking about, making sure that we're using infrastructure to make sure that water's coming out of corporations, out of places like 3M, have the right water treatment facilities. It not only affects drinking water, groundwater, but it's affecting livelihood for many folks also.
Thank you. Shelley, I'll begin the next question with you. What additional measures, if any, should be made to address ever-increasing state pension liability?
Oh, that's a good question. I think that the pensions are important. I can tell you that I am a union baby, okay? So I know I was raised in a union family where my father had a pension. He was a pipe fitter. So we had a very modest lifestyle, but part of what we had as a family was a pension, and my father right now lives on Maple Street in a little tiny house at 84 years old, and he's living with dignity and health care. And so I just want to mention that his pension through his company is what's making him happy right now and making us happy that he's taken care of. So I think we need to make sure that those pensions are available to city workers, to state workers. Once we start getting away from that, we're going to have to find other ways to take care of folks in their old age, and I think that we need to make sure that we're funding those programs for sure.
Thank you, Kathy.
Thank you. Yeah, I would agree that this is an important issue. I think that reforms really do need to happen, but we can't take money that we promised to people and pull the rug out from under them, so we need to work on ways in reforming, whether it's between deferred comp and deferred benefit plans, and I just think that's something the legislature needs to continue to work on. Thank you.
Thank you, Kathy. I'll begin with you. The 2016 legislature adjourned without addressing key items: taxes, transportation, and bonding bills. Leadership could not agree on an agenda for a special session, as you recall. Partisan gridlock is a reoccurring theme in all levels of politics. What specific measures do you support to increase the transparency and reduce the gridlock of the lawmaking process in Minnesota?
Thank you for that question. You're absolutely right that this is a problem. And what I see as a major problem I've been there since 2011, so for the past 8 years, I've been there with a governor who has not been part of the process throughout the entire legislative session. And what ends up happening is because he and his commissioners and the folks that he works with don't work with the legislature, we come down to the last minute and we have been working hard, and this job is we're up all night and we're passing bills and we're trying to get things for the people of Minnesota accomplished. But we come to the last few days of session and all of a sudden the governor steps in and says, well, I don't want this, or I do want this, and so that's how we end up with such a mess at the end of session, because he has not been willing to come and sit down with us and work with us through the process. So I am very hopeful that whoever is governor, and I'm very hopeful that it's Jeff Johnson, but even if it's not, that whoever the governor is will sit down with the legislature early in the session in January and talk about what his ideas are and his goals are and work with the legislature so that we don't have any of this last minute and we can't agree and then it just all blows up and we don't get anything done. I don't think that serves the people very well, and it certainly isn't easy to be part of that process at all. So I'm very hopeful that we have a governor that we can work with.
Thank you. Shelley.
Well, first of all, I don't know how many of you ever go on our state legislative or the state site, the website that we have, and it's very inclusive. So you can learn a lot from our website. So I will give us that, that there, you can learn about every bill that's going, you can learn about every legislator out there, you can learn, really everything that's going on daily. It's kept up daily. So we do have, as far as transparency, we do have that out there. Kathy mentioned the problem with the not getting things passed in the end. I'm going to mention again a 900-page omnibus bill that came to the table the evening before the vote was to happen. So we are playing, if I can change one thing, let me do that. Okay, we are playing politics in that case. When we have those kinds of bills that come out, that is playing politics with our education, because yes, there was education funding language in there. It's playing politics with all kinds of things, beet juice, whatever it is, because whoever has that omnibus bill going knows that there are certain things in there that are not going to fly. So guess what? That's fodder. It's fodder for mudslinging. Okay, so those 900-page omnibus bills are a huge problem. If I can do one thing over there, and it's asking a lot, it's to get us to have single-purpose bills and to get away from those monster omnibus bills. Yeah.
Go ahead, about 30 seconds.
Okay, I just want to say I totally agree with Shelley. I am not a fan of omnibus bills either. In fact, we actually had a legislator who took to court the whole omnibus bill idea and said, this is not constitutional, and it went through court, and he lost that court case. He was a legislator, and he'd been there a long time. So as much as we don't like it, it's what happens in divided government, so that both sides end up getting what they want. At least that's what the court said. And so it's hard, but I think that we're stuck with them. So we have to. That's why we have to work together from the very
Shelley,
beginning.
you want to add anything at all? Another 30
It is in the
seconds.
Minnesota Constitution that we have single bills, single issue bills. So that is in the Minnesota Constitution. So we can argue that. We can argue that back and forth, and I'll stop there. I never said thank you for hosting us.
Oh,
also
you're
in the
welcome.
beginning. Yeah,
Thank
my
you.
mother would be, yeah. She's
She'd be
cringing
upset,
in her
huh?
grave right now, yeah.
As well, she should. Okay.
Yeah.
Shelley, I believe. The going back.
I don't remember.
Yeah, I think so. According to the Minnesota State Demographer, around 2020, Minnesota's 65-plus population is expected to eclipse the K through 12 population, ages 5 through 17, for the first time in history. What, if anything, should the state do to prepare for this aging population?
Okay, this has been an issue of mine since the beginning of my campaign. And that is right, those statistics are right. By 2030, 2020, there's going to be more senior citizens than there are school-aged children. And you know what we need to invest in schools, right? So we need to look at that changing, demographic. We need to have, aging in place type programs so that older folks, senior citizens, can stay in their home as long as possible, because guess what? Homes, Boutwell, things like that are very, very expensive. Plus, most people, if you have a senior citizen in your family, they want to stay home. So we need to provide transit. We need to provide medical supplies. We need to pay home health workers a decent wage so that the turnover isn't so high, and that we can have home health workers that can go into homes and take care of seniors. So yes, there's a lot that we need to do to prepare for that changing demographic in Minnesota. I agree.
Kathy.
Thank you. I was thinking about 2 years ago, we passed legislation that increased funding to nursing homes across the state of Minnesota because there was a serious shortage of people working, and it was hard to hire people for the amount of money that they could be paid. And so that was a real positive thing that we did to care for our seniors. I guess the biggest point is that we need to take care of the people that we have. And I serve on the long-term care committee, and we had a lot of discussion last year. We had several different bills. We passed a bill that, of course, the governor vetoed again, that basically the Office of the Legislative Auditor, which is a nonpartisan group, actually came up with 9 points that needed to be changed to keep our seniors safe, and the Office of Facilities Complaints was not doing their job. And so there were boxes, literally boxes of complaints that were just thrown in the garbage and nobody was taken care of. So I don't know if you remember this, but we had, the commissioner had to resign, the assistant commissioner had to resign. We have a new commissioner now who's doing a much better job. But we had fixes in place for that because we need to take care of the senior citizens that we have. My mother is in an assisted living or memory care down in Hastings, and I want to know that she's safe there. I want to know that she's being well cared for there, and heaven forbid anything bad would happen to her and a complaint was made that it was ignored. That's just not okay. So we did have those that bill, and unfortunately, it was vetoed, and so I think we'll work on that again. I know we'll work on that again next year because we need to keep our seniors safe.
Thank you. Kathy, for many years, some people have suggested that the Met Council be abolished. How do you feel?
I feel it should be abolished. I found out something this fall that I didn't know, and maybe other people in this room already knew it, but we're the only state in the country where we have non-elected people running this type of an agency. And so Jason Lewis actually had a bill that went through the federal government about this, and he was talking about how he was just all ready for the big floor fight on the House floor in Washington, D.C., and he was just all prepared for people to stand up, and he had all his talking points, and not a person stood up, because there's no other state in the country that has the kind of system that we have with the Met Council. So I think we need to look at what other states are doing and how they're handling it, and I think we need to revamp our Met Council.
Thank you, Shelley.
I think there's room for agencies like the Met Council, but I agree that we need to look at it. How is it functioning? How is it, how is it working for us? And so I do think that they are a great equalizer for us, that they have the best interests, especially of outstate communities in mind when they try to keep things fair within communities. So that's all I'll say, is I think we need to look closer at what and how we can make that work better.
Thank you. Shelley, I'll begin with you. School districts in Minnesota spend millions of dollars on money from their general funds each year to pay for special education services. What, if anything, should the state do to fully fund them and eliminate the cross-subsidy?
Okay. The state has been mandating, and in our district, I know that for sure, the state has been mandating special education, and they should, as they should. We should be having great special education programs in our schools. But the state comes up with mandates for school districts that they don't fund. So that means that the school districts are asking us, the taxpayer, for more money locally in order to fund that, or they're closing buildings, or, the school districts are making really difficult decisions about what to do about money because of those mandates. We have a great special education system in this district, but it's very expensive and it's not being funded. And if we don't begin to fund it at the state level, I believe the state has a lot to do with the problems in local school districts, because we have not kept up with inflation when we're funding our schools, and special education is a part of that.
Thank you, Kathy.
Thank you. Yes, I agree with you, Shelley, that we do have a lot of unfunded mandates that the schools are having to deal with, and we do need to do some reforms when it comes to I'm sure the cost of special education is higher than the regular population, so whatever we can do to help that situation, I totally agree with you.
I have to ask this. I always like to help the voters. Kathy, what differentiates you from your opponent?
Well,
you have 2 minutes.
It was funny when Shelley walked in tonight, we both said the same thing. We've never even seen each other before, much less met each other before. But I'm a Republican and she's a Democrat, so I suppose in this case that's the differences and the things that we stand for as far as how we see government, how we see the proper role of government.
And how is that?
Well, I guess I see the individual as more important than the state, that the state isn't the government isn't the answer for every problem that we have in the state, that people are able to live their lives and take care of themselves. And yes, there's a proper role for government, but government should not control everything in our lives. And I feel, as I've been there for 8 years, what I hear often at the Capitol is that, the government's trying to fix everything and trying to be the answer to everything. And I don't think that that's what government should be. So that would be probably my answer.
Okay, thank you. Shelley?
Yeah, there are differences. As she's a Republican and I'm a Democrat. I believe a lot of the difference is I believe that the government is here to make people's lives better, period. I think that's what the Constitution, the big Constitution, Minnesota Constitution, I think that's what that's aiming at too, is that we are here to make sure that we have liberty and justice for all, every single one of us, no matter what we look like, no matter who we love, no matter who we are, period. So I think that is a difference, that we need to include all peoples in the in the way that we run our states, the way that we run our country. So I do believe that government has a role in that. We are so lucky in Minnesota, and, God forbid government is too heavy, but we have a fantastic standard of living here. Do we have needs? Absolutely, we have needs. But we are lucky in Minnesota, and that's because in the past, the government has taken individuals, people, and tried to make their lives better. And they've, for the most part, if you look around the country, they've succeeded. We have a fantastic state that we live in now. So I believe that the government does have a role in our happiness, in our freedom, in our liberty, and in justice.
Thank you. Shelley, I'll begin the next question with you. We have seen many deadly accidents on Highway 36 and other major state-owned roadways in the district over the past year. What are ways that the state legislature can improve safety on roadways? Do you support allocating funds for improvement projects, and are there any policy changes that could improve road safety?
I just talked on the phone a few nights ago with Eric Davis, who's with the Department of Transportation, and we talked just about that because I had questions about it. I don't know everything that I should know about it. The Department of Transportation plans out a few years ahead of time, so they've already got their plans. And part of those plans are to address our traffic problems on Highway 36. A lot of their work is going to go beyond this district a little bit into Oakdale and that way up to by Menards and all that. But it's going to be more of a freeway type system there where there aren't all of the stoplights and cars coming in from all directions. And there's going to be some overpass work done to help that. So, and do they need funding? Absolutely. But the DOT does have some funding, and they have put some funding aside to address that.
Thank you. Kathy?
Yeah, that's a great question. So you're absolutely right. I've been here long enough to see the new bridge put in, and since the bridge is there, we've had some challenges with Highway 36, and anybody who lives here knows that we have a lot more traffic on Highway 36, and yes, we've had some tremendous accidents and loss of life, and it's been very, very sad. So I know that there's been a bonding request for Highway 36 in Manning that it was a fairly large request and it didn't actually make it through the process last year, but we're going to continue to work on that. I've actually spoken quite often with Adam Josephson with MnDOT about this area, and I've suggested things which, they know what they're doing more than I do, but, just as common sense, you think, why don't we put some of those amber lights, warning people about the stoplight at Lake Elmo Avenue and 36, and I know that Oak Park Heights is working on their frontage roads as well. So it definitely, things have changed since the bridge has come in, and there's a lot to work on. We also have an issue, maybe you've noticed this, and it's kind of slowed down a little bit, but for a while there we were seeing so many of the 18-wheelers going up and down Highway 36 that we never saw before, and a lot of them going through Bayport, and so it seemed like maybe there was a little bit of avoidance of that way station on 94, so I talked with the State Patrol, and I asked them if they would do some monitoring on that because we don't want those 18-wheelers avoiding where they're supposed to be going and causing more issues in our district. So,
Thank you. Kathy, for what reasons, if any, should there ever be an increase in gasoline tax?
So I don't support any tax increases. I don't think the state has a taxing problem. I think it has a spending problem. And so I was just looking at a chart today put out by Yahoo Finance. We are the #1 taxed state in the country. So we have all kinds of things that we could do to spend our money better. There's waste, there's fraud, there's abuse. I know that you've all seen the stories about $100 million going to country in cash, in suitcases, going to countries that don't even like us, and that's fraud in the daycare system, that's fraud in the PCA system. We have the MNLARS debacle, we have the MNsure debacle, we have the Minute debacle, we have a lot of waste and a lot of problems going on with the agencies that are currently serving the state of Minnesota. So I think we could do much better with the money that we're getting. People pay a lot of money in taxes in this state. And so I don't support any tax increases.
Shelley.
Would you mind repeating the question? Okay.
If I can find it.
Yeah.
Here we go. I have lots in my arsenal here. What reasons, if any, should there be an increase in gasoline tax?
Okay. Transit. And that's my simple answer, and I'll elaborate a little bit. I don't know how many of you work in the cities. I know I'm hoping to work in the cities soon, and I would sure love to be able to hop on a bus and go work in downtown St. Paul. We do not have 21st century transit out in this area, in this district. So where do we get that money? We use user tax. So I do believe there's room, along with bonding. It's not going to be the only answer. I do believe that there's room for a tax in order to build a transit system. I'm not talking about trains out here, but some sort of rapid bus transit route so that folks can get to work, disabled people can get around. I have a friend whose mother tries to get to see her daughter over in Egan, and it's a half a day of travel. A half a day of just travel to get to Egan. So we are behind on transit, and there is room for a gas tax in order to fund something like that. I'll stop there. Yeah.
Thank you. Shelley, I'll begin with you.
Okay.
Funding for mass transit projects have been a contentious issue in the past for state legislators. What are your views on funding proposed mass transit projects, including the Gold Line, a bus rapid transit line planned between St. Paul and Woodbury?
Okay. We need funding for transit. I've had people, I've been here all my life, and so I know lots of people who are even older than I am, that have been here much longer, and make jokes about the old trolley system that we had in Stillwater, and you could go to Matamidi and St. Paul on the trolley. We really had a fantastic transit system back then, and we are so behind right now. So yes, we do need to fund transportation. Young folks these days, and a lot of them are working on my campaign, so I talk to them, they do not want to drive. They want to be able to take public transit to work. If we have transit stations and bus and train stations, economy around that area booms. Businesses come. Many businesses will not come to our area unless we're planning transit stations for them. So we need to join the rest of the world. If anyone's ever been to DC, some of the other big cities with fabulous transit systems, it not only helps our air, but it helps clogging on highways, which we complain about every single day, don't we? We just talked about Highway 36. And it gets people who may not have access to personal transportation, it gets them to places that they have to be, and to be able to go out and make a living elsewhere outside of their city.
Thank you. Kathy.
Thank you, Margot. So I am not a big supporter of transit at all. In fact, I look at this as we need to make long-term investments with the dollars that we have. 99% of the people in the state of Minnesota use roads and bridges. And even if you're going to go on the Gold Line from, I'm not sure where it's starting now in the plan, but when I went on the tour, it was Manning and 94, and it was 12 miles down to the depot. That was, and this is at least 6 years ago, that was supposed to be $475 million for that 12 miles. And you need a car to get there, and then when you get there, then where are you going to go? And, we live in Minnesota. Like, there might be communities and cities across the country where transit works much better than it does here, but I don't know how it works here. If you're a mom and you're picking up your kid from school because they have an orthodontist appointment and then you have to get them to soccer practice, you need a car. It's not something you can just get on the bus or on this bus rapid transit and get from point A to point B. It doesn't turn corners. And I mean, talking to young people, the people that I talk to who are young, that are under 35 years old, are talking about driverless cars. That is the future. Within 10 to 15 years, we will probably have driverless cars. It will be a totally different thing, and all of these light rails and these guided ways are going to be obsolete. Now, I'm all about buses, like the express buses that go to downtown Minneapolis. My daughter-in-law, when she worked at Target, she took that bus every day, and it was fabulous. I'm all for buses, don't get me wrong, but the actual guided ways and the rails are very expensive, and people aren't riding them. I don't have anybody in my district asking me for this. I never hear from a soul about it. So it's an awful lot of money for people not asking for it.
Thank you, Kathy. What more, if anything, can be done to increase healthcare coverage and reduce the costs associated with it?
Yeah, healthcare, that's a really loaded topic right now. So, you know, we've had these premium increases that have been just horrendous for people. And so in the last session, we were able to do the reinsurance. We were able to do the bill that actually helped bring premiums down for the people in the state of Minnesota. And so we're working on that trajectory right now. As was mentioned in an earlier debate, I mean, we need to do a lot of things to bring competition into the market. So our oldest son was born 37 years ago with a disability called spina bifida, and he's had over 80 surgeries. He's had a lot of challenges in his life. But back in the day when he was younger, you know, we had insurance, and we would get these bills for surgeries, and they would come back, and we were actually able to look at them. I don't know if you can even do that anymore, but you can look at the bill and you can say, oh, gee, he never even had a blood transfusion. They charged us for that. And, oh, gee, he didn't have this or that or whatever. And our insurance company would actually give us 50% of any mistakes that we would find. So it was the patient and the family being accountable for the monies that were being charged, and we don't have that anymore. So we need to go back to that kind of system. I know that the DFL is really pushing for single payer, and I will tell you that I don't think my son would be alive today if we had single payer. When you talk to people who live in countries that do, the health care is very, when you can get it, if you live that long. I have a friend whose son in England had a tonsil problem that he was probably going to die. He wasn't not getting any care, and he wasn't getting any help, and they had to dig into their own pocket and go find a doctor who would take cash and actually help him. I have stories from Canada. There's all kinds of stories about that. So we need to keep our system. Thank you.
Shelley?
Okay. You're very lucky and privileged to have the insurance that you had for your son. So, and many of us do, possibly through, you know, through our work, et cetera. But not everyone has access to that. Not everyone has access to that. So yes, we need to, are we going to leave those people to be ill? No, we're not. What are they doing now? They're going to emergency rooms. Because you know what? It's desperation and it's an emergency. They're going to emergency rooms. That costs us a lot of money. The Republicans claim that they lowered insurance costs for us. What they did was they bought out the insurance companies. Now think about an insurance company. Watch the stock shows in the mornings. Insurance companies have a fiduciary responsibility to their board members and to all of their shareholders, and that is to make money. That is what insurance companies do. They're not there to care for our health. Okay, so what the Republicans did is they spent $500 million to bail out an insurance company for 1 year, no promises of lowering premiums in the future, and that's what we've got now. So that's what's, all the flyers you're getting and everything, that's what it's saying now, is that, you know, that they lowered insurance premiums at great cost, $500 million. I believe that we should have an optional buy-in opportunity for MNsure. So I'm not quite ready to call it single payer yet, I guess, but I think we should have an optional buy-in opportunity. Optional being the key word there, that many of us will probably keep our insurance that we have now, but if the need is there, that there is affordable and accessible health care available through MNsure for anyone in Minnesota.
Kathy, can you rebut in 30 seconds?
I'll try. So what we did is we took people who were extremely ill and costing a lot of money, and we put funding into that so that it would keep the healthcare premiums down for other people. And actually, Senator Klobuchar was just on the debate last night saying that that was a great idea. So we're going to keep doing those kinds of ideas, innovative ideas, so we can get health insurance premiums back down where they need to be. But what we need to do is keep it in the private market. Thank you.
Thank you. One final question, Shelley. What is one issue you feel so strongly about that you would have voted against your own party to see it adopted or defeated?
There's probably more than one. I'm going to say this, I'm an independent thinker. And so I'm not a perfect mold into every DFL idea out there. I do know one thing, is as an independent thinker, I am going to be listening to you, to my constituents, because you're the ones that this incredibly long, unbelievable, I'm a first-time candidate, job interview that I've been going through for the last year and a half, I have heard from people. So, I believe that we need, for one thing, I will say the omnibus bill, I think Democrats will make use of omnibus bills too, so if I have to go to the Democrats, against the Democrats to fight against that, I will do that. And also, I think it's I'm going to stop there. Yeah, I'm going to stop there.
That's fine. Kathy?
Yeah, so, there's this idea that we all, whether we're Democrats or we're Republicans, we just walk lockstep and we don't think on our own and we don't have our own ideas, and really nothing could be further from the truth. And I agree with you, Shelley, in that I'm an independent thinker as well, and there are ideas that each of us bring to the legislature, no matter what party it is. And, people aren't always sold right off the bat on our ideas. So that's kind of our job within our caucuses to sell folks on what we're trying to do. So I just think of an example last year of the hands-free bill. And a lot of people think that's a really, really good idea for, driving and not holding your cell phone or whatever. And so within our caucus, there was a lot of discussion, and there's lots of issues like that, opioids, people having ideas and then having to work through those ideas to make them actually work and get passed and actually be constitutional and all of those things. So I don't see this as something that, I'm just going to go in and it's going to be such a radical idea that I'm going to have to go against my own whole caucus or anything like that. But there might be an idea that I have that I'm going to have to work with my colleagues to help them understand what I'm trying to do. And that's what they do with me. And that, there's 77 members in our caucus right now, whatever that number is. We have to work together. We have to realize that we're a big state and people represent different parts of the state and different things are important to different parts of the state. And so it's a process, until you're part of it, it's hard to even fathom. But, that's the way the process works.
Thank you, and we'll begin closing statements. 1 minute,
Can I say one thing?
20 seconds.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, no, just very quickly. I do have one idea that I'm not sure every Democrat would agree with me on, and I don't think that redistricting, okay, we have redistricting is a problem in our country. Minnesota isn't too bad, but we're affected. That redistricting should be in the hands of legislators. So we would need an amendment to get it. Sorry.
We got the idea,
Okay,
Shelley.
okay.
Kathy, 1 minute.
Okay. Well, I want to thank you all again for coming out tonight and thank the great constituents of District 39B for all of your support over the past years. And I want to especially thank my husband, Greg. I mean, seriously, he is the best spouse you could ever have when it comes to campaigning, and so I'm thankful for him. And my sons and daughter-in-law is so supportive, and my awesome grandkids, Gavin, Hadley, Tegan, and Everett. I do this job for them. And I just want to say, once again, I'm really proud of the work that we did last session, lowering healthcare costs, providing the largest education funding increase in 12 years, providing the largest tax cuts in decades. And I'm really excited, hopefully, to work with Jeff Johnson, who wants to change the status quo in Minnesota. I believe real change is needed and real change is coming. So please go to my website, kathylomer.com, and you can find out more about me. Thank you.
Thank you, Shelley.
Okay, thank you everyone for coming. Also, thanks to my family. I didn't mention, I do have a daughter and two grandsons, 13 and 17 years old. So thank you to them because they've been out pounding signs and doing all of the campaign stuff that I'm sure Kathy's family has had to be involved in also. If there's one thing that I want to get across about myself is that I think one of the most common things I hear at the doors is Why is everything so mean-spirited? Why is everyone so angry? Why can't people talk to each other anymore? And so, damn it, if no one tries, it's not going to happen, and I'm going to try. I'm going to try to get over there and reach across the aisle. It's the kind of teacher I was, a student-centered teacher. It's the kind of legislator I will be. I will be a people-centered legislator that reaches across the aisle. I will try. Bob, I will talk with you. So I think that's something that's really missing. We need respectful dialogue in our homes, in our classrooms, and in all of our institutions.
Thank you. Alicia Labens, Managing Editor of the Stillwater Gazette, is writing up your responses. They'll appear in Friday, October 26th newspaper. Your form is being replayed on Valley Access channels. Contact them for the dates and times. On behalf of the Stillwater Gazette and Beth Johnson, my co-organizer, thank you for everyone for attending. Totally impressive. And thank you both for attending.
Thank you.
Thank you.